Hey NCPA students, today I'm going to show you how your final grades are calculated. So as you may know, for each of your classes you will have just one final grade at the end of the year. And to figure out how it's calculated, we'll need to look at reporting standards, the average of the last 3 summative assessments, the ranges of exemplary, proficient, approaching, and not yet, and then we'll also look at some special cases in PowerSchool and talk briefly about incompletes. So first, reporting standards. So reporting standards are the standards in each of your classes that teachers will assess you in. So for example, you'll see that right now we're in integrated math, and these are all the standards in integrated math that Mrs. Brown or Mr. Bohm will be assessing you in. So just as an example, let's say that these 4 standards were assessed in your first semester. So then we'll go to our calculator and we'll pretend again that these are the 4 standards that you were assessed in. So you'll see it says score 1, score 2, score 3. What this is talking about is that the only grades that affect your final grade are the last 3 summative assessments for each of the 4 standards. So that means if you had 6 assignments, then this would be score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Still, it's these last 3 grades that would affect your overall grade, your final grade. And these first 3 wouldn't count. So we'll go back. And just to pretend, let's say that the final 3 grades for Standard 1 were proficient, approaching. Let's say for Standard 2, there were only 2 summative assessments and you got exemplary and proficient. For the third one, it was really tough and you got, let's say you got 2 approachings. And for Standard 4, let's say you had, let's do proficient, approaching. So you'll see that what this does in the sheet is that it just takes an average of these numbers. So you'll see that there are numbers corresponding to the letters. And here's that table. And please keep in mind that these numbers only have to do with PowerSchool finding an average. Because as you know, we can't really find an average of letters. So we need to convert letters into numbers. So the easiest way to do that is to say 1 is N, 2 is A, 3 is P, and 4 is E. So you'll see here that the overall standard score is just an average of those 3 numbers, but basically it's an average of those 3 letters. So here it's 3.5, 2, and 2.67. And then this number here is an average of these 4 numbers. So it's taking then, here are your final grades for each standard. So here's your final number score for all 4 standards. And now we come to the final, let's say the final grade. So how this is calculated is by using this range. So here are the ranges. A not yet is anything between 0 and 1.49. An approaching would be anything between 1.5 and 2.49. Then similar for proficient. And then exemplaries 3.5 and above. So this is the range in which this final letter grade is calculated. So we'll go back to this number and we'll see 2.63 falls right in between the P range. So that's why you have a proficient at the end. Okay, so I've pretended like there were 3 summative assessments for all 4 of the standards, and here's just a different situation. You'll see this is the new average per standard, then those 4 numbers will be averaged to get 2.42, and that falls just below the top of that range for approaching. So your final grade would be an approaching. Okay, so what we just did was we looked at the standards that are going to be reported in for each of your classes. Then we looked at the average for each standard of the last 3 summative assessments. We looked up the number within a range. And next we're going to look at some special cases in PowerSchool, because I know you've been asking your teachers a lot of questions about this. So here's an example of a grade 12 student in AP Calculus BC. The class doesn't really matter. Basically what we're looking at is the grade, right? I'm using the student as an example because there are 4 standards that have been assessed in AP Calculus BC for semester 1, and you'll see that the grades are proficient, proficient, exemplary, exemplary. So maybe the student might wonder, how come I didn't get an exemplary? So to figure this out, we need to look at the number of assignments for each standard. So we see that here, the proficient for standard 1 was a result of just 1 assignment. So obviously that assignment was a proficient grade. And now going back for standard 3, the proficient was a result of 7 assignments. And we'll see that the last 3 assessments for that standard were proficient, exemplary, proficient. So going back to our calculation, P was 3, right? So 3 plus 4 plus 3 divided by 3, an average of the last 3, would give you 3.3. So 3.3, we'll see that this is exemplary from 2 grades, and the 2 grades were E and P. So 4 and 3, that would be a 3.5 average. And the last one, exemplary, was just from 1 assessment, so that's a 4. Let's add those up. So we had a 3.0 plus a 3.33 plus 3.5 plus 4.5, or 4.0, sorry. That would give you 13.83. Then there were 4 standards assessed again, so then we divide by 4, and we get if you round it up, right, 3.46. And then we remember that in our ranges, a 3.46 is actually still proficient. So she was 0.03 away from getting an exemplary. So that just gives you an idea of why that might happen, why you might have 2 A's and 2 P's and get an A, or have 2 P's and 2 E's and get a final grade of P. So what I would encourage you to do is when you see this in PowerSchool, as early as possible, that means not the last minute, not the last week even, as early as possible, talk with your teachers about this and see if you can reassess in any of the assessments so that you can get pushed up to the next grade that you want. So the final situation is incompletes. If you have an incomplete as a final grade at the end of the course, then you don't get credit for that class. So that means that you don't get credit for your entire year or half year of study in that course, which is not something that we want. So that means as a 9th grader, at the end of this year, you will have 8 total final grades. The only grade on your report card for semester 1 that is a final grade is for music. Whether you had choral music with Miss Hill or instrumental music with Mr. Kaliva, that final grade you have on your semester 1 report card for music is the only final grade you currently have. All other 7 classes, those final grades will be given in June for your semester on your semester 2 report card. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. If you have any questions at all, please come talk to me, or you can email me at ayu@ncpachina.org. Thank you, bye! Have a great Chinese New Year break.